Now let's understand the various definitions of macroeconomics. First one is given by K.E. Bodling. According to K.E. Bodling, macroeconomics is that part of economics which studies the overall averages and aggregates of the economic system. Let's understand this line once again. Macroeconomics is that part of economics. That means it is that branch of economics. Since we are very well aware, there are two branches of economics, micro and macro. So out of this, macro is that part of economics, that branch of economics which studies the overall averages. That means the economy in totality. Averages, that means it studies the economy in total and not individual parts of it. Moving ahead, and it also studies the aggregates of the economic system. So by aggregates we mean that macroeconomic studies aggregate demand, aggregate supply, general price level, national income. So all these are aggregate concepts, right? Further, it does not deal with individual incomes but with national income. Not with individual prices but with general price level. And not with individual output but with national output. So this shows that macroeconomics is much more focused on the performance, structure as well as behavior of the overall economy. And it also shows how the resources are allocated at the level of the economic system as a whole. So keeping in mind the economy as a whole. The next definition is given by P.A. Samuelson. So according to P.A. Samuelson, macroeconomics is the study of the behavior of the economy as a whole. It examines, that means it studies the overall level of a nation's output, employment, prices, and foreign trade. Now students, let's understand the origin of macroeconomics. Macroeconomics is of relatively recent origin. The foundation of macroeconomics as a branch of economics was given by a British economist named John Maynard Keynes, popularly known as Keynes, in his revolutionary book titled The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. But this does not mean that the economists before Keynes did not give any importance to the field of macroeconomics. We will now understand the growth of the field of macroeconomics by understanding schools of economic thought. Now this section is divided under three subsections, namely classical microeconomics, Kinesian Theory, and third one is Postclinician Developments. Let's understand each of these three subsections in much detail. Now let's understand the entire growth in the field of macroeconomics by understanding schools of economic thought. So the first subsection here comes is about classical macroeconomics. The school of economic thoughts that dominated the economic world before the Kinesian revolution is called as the classical school. The classical school of thought is composed of certain assumptions and beliefs. That is the macroeconomics. Classical macroeconomists, they have put forward certain assumptions and certain beliefs. So let's understand which are those assumptions and which are their beliefs. The first one is that they have thought that the main idea of the classical school is that markets work best when they are left alone, that is without any government intervention. That is, They do not want the government to intervene in the functioning of the market. So this idea is called as laissez-faire. Their second belief or assumption was that there will always be full employment in the long run, and unemployment, if any, then it will only be for a short-term period. That means there will always be employment, full employment in the long run. There will also be neither the problem of overproduction nor underproduction, and the economy will always be in equilibrium in the long run. But this major field, that is the field of classical macroeconomics, had faced a major problem when there was a Great Depression during the year 1929. Next subsection within schools of economic thought is about Kinesian theory. Now students, during the Great Depression in USA, that was in the year 1929, policymakers were not able to find a solution for mass unemployment. So during that time, there was mass unemployment present, and they were not able to find the solution to it. So they were following and believing the principles and assumptions of classical macroeconomics. So the principles and assumptions of classical macroeconomists were that they believed that markets correct themselves on their own. That is, there is no need for the government to intervene. So this idea was questioned by Keynes. So during that time, Keynes intervened and tried to find out the answer for two main questions. That is, why markets fail. And second question is that why government needs to intervene. So because of this problem or this belief of classical economists, Keynes tried to answer to this question that because markets are not able, sometimes markets are not able to correct themselves, that is the reason the government sometimes needs to intervene. This led to the development of the Kinesian school of thought or the Kinesian theory, which became the base for the development of modern macroeconomics. The period between the late 1930s to mid-1960s is called as the period of Kinesian Revolution. During this period, there were many developed countries which had adopted Kinesian policies of fiscal and monetary policy. This is not only limited to developed countries but India too. So India's developmental plans also included Kinesian theory of growth and employment. But however students, as we know, the real economic world goes through a continuous process of evolution. It passes from one system to another. So this is what happened with Kinesian Revolution also, as it gave rise to new kinds of revolutionary thoughts, that is post-Kinesian macroeconomics. The third and final subsection under schools of economic thought is post-Kinesian developments. Here, the important post-Kinesian development in macroeconomics was the emergence of monetarism, and this concept of monetarism was put forward by Milton Friedman. So what is monetarism? Monetarism is a school of thought in monetary economics which emphasizes, that is gives importance to the role of governments in controlling the amount of money in circulation. So monetarists have given importance to the role of money supply and central bank in determining the price level in an economy. Now let's understand the importance of macroeconomics. So why are we studying macroeconomics? Macroeconomics is important. That is, the study of macroeconomics is of great importance especially to policymakers, researchers, academicians, business firms, international agencies like World Bank, IMF, WTO, and not only to them students, to each and every citizen in every country, so as to know the functioning of the economy. So following are some of the reasons why a good understanding of macroeconomics is important. So let's quickly go through that. So the first point is functioning of the economy. So the study of macroeconomics helps us to analyze as well as understand how a complicated economic system works. Further, the study of macroeconomics also helps us to understand the interaction between different sectors of an economy, like households, businesses, and government, as well as analyze how different markets interact with one another. So next point here comes is to understand and evaluate economic performance. So students, economic growth and development are considered to be the most important indicators of an economy's performance. So students, by understanding the or studying the field of macroeconomics, we are able to compare and evaluate different economies in the world. So this is only possible through the concept of national income and per capita income. So whenever we need to understand that which country is economically strong, so we do this on the basis of per capita income. So this is only possible when we have understanding of the field of macroeconomics. Next importance is to formulate government policies. The study of macroeconomics helps our government in the formulation of useful economic policies such as fiscal policy, monetary policy, import-export policies, etc. to promote economic development. For example, Kinesian theory is been the foundation of counter-cyclical fiscal and monetary policies, which was followed by most developed economies in the world so as to deal with recession, unemployment and inflation. Next point is to understand economic environment of business. Various business units are affected by the macroeconomic environment. Rate of interest, price level, business cycles, exchange rate, level of employment, investment, expenditure level, all these various indicators have major impact on performance of business units. Hence, understanding and studying macroeconomics is extremely important in taking effective business decisions. Next is to forecast future trends. The study of macroeconomics also provides a firm foundation to economic analysts so as to forecast future trends. That is, if any policymakers want to understand what will be the changes in future economic indicators, then they will be able to do so by having an understanding of macroeconomics. Now these various indicators like interest rate, exchange rate, growth rate, price level, income, employment levels, all this inflation rate, all this will be able to be possible through understanding and studying macroeconomics. So such trends are used by governments as well as businesses to formulate policies. Next is to make political choices. The field of economics and politics have very strong interlinkage. Political parties and leaders in democracies always try to win votes by providing economic benefits like employment, income, price control, and social welfare. So one can make a good and wise political choice if one has an understanding of the functioning of an economy. Next point is to solve economic problems. Macroeconomics also help economists to solve the various and major economic problems like unemployment, inflation, poverty, and many more by formulating proper policies. One last point is to understand the growing complexity of economic system. The modern economic system has grown extremely complex due to unlimited human needs and desires, globalization, increasing international flows in capital, manpower, and technology, as well as problems due to changing world. Thus, in order to cope up with the problems arising of the changing world, a clear understanding of economic system is required. So the study of macroeconomics helps to understand the system as a whole. Further, macroeconomics provides powerful tools to understand the working of the complex economic system. Now let's understand the scope or subject matter of macroeconomics. Scope or subject matter means what is included in macroeconomics. So while we study this field of macroeconomics, so there are certain relevant topics that we study. After studying those relevant topics, we have an understanding of macroeconomics. So let's understand what are those topics. First is determination of national income. The focus of macroeconomics is to study the factors that will determine a country's national income. So this national income further depends on factors like consumption, investment, government expenditures, net exports, etc. Further, after studying the chapter that is national income accounting, we will be able to understand further concepts such as the concept of GDP, gross domestic product, the concept of GNP, that is gross national product, as well as the concept of NNP, that is net national product. After studying these concepts, we will be able to analyze as well as compare the performance of the countries. Next point is economic fluctuations or business cycles. Business cycles are nothing but economic fluctuations which every economy goes through. There are various phases of business cycles. As you can see towards the right, there are 4 phases of business cycles: prosperity, recession, depression, and recovery. So all these phases further helps us to understand that there are various macroeconomic problems such as problem of inflation, problem of unemployment. This helps the government or policy makers to develop measures such as fiscal measure or monetary policy so as to reduce or remove these problems. Next point is aggregate demand and aggregate supply. National income as well as fluctuation in the level of national income is determined via the theory of income and employment. As we know, there was a Great Depression in the year 1929. So this Great Depression took place as a result of fall in the level of income and employment. So in order to solve this problem, it was observed that classical economic principles had failed. It was seen that Kinesian views were much more effective. Thus, the macroeconomics focus was now shifted towards components of aggregate demand. Macroeconomics focus has been shifted to various components of aggregate demand such as consumption, investment, government expenditure as well as net exports. It was seen that aggregate supply can only be increased in the long run through improvement in productivity, investments, technological changes as well as policies. Next point is employment and unemployment. Macroeconomic studies the level as well as the nature of unemployment. By level of unemployment, we mean the rate of unemployment, while nature of unemployment means what type of unemployment a country is going through, whether it is a chronic unemployment, short-term unemployment or long-term unemployment. During recession, due to lack of aggregate demand, the economy experiences large-scale involuntary unemployment. This is usually experienced by developed countries. Developing countries also go through unemployment. This is because of fall in their economic activities. The type of unemployment usually developing countries go through is disguised unemployment, mass unemployment, as well as underemployment. What is disguised unemployment? When more persons who are working in a job than actually required. This situation is termed as disguised unemployment. So if workers are withdrawn, that is removed from here, then the total production remains unchanged. For example, if 20 workers are engaged in a work and out of 20, if 6 of them are removed and the total production does not change, then these 6 people will be called as disguisedly unemployed. Underemployment means a person is working but is working at less than its full capacity. Macroeconomics also studies the causes of unemployment as well as provides various employment policies. One such renowned policy provided by government is MG Narega, that is Mahatma Gandhi Employment Guarantee Act. This act aims to improve livelihood security in the rural areas by providing at least 100 days of wage employment in a financial year to every household whose adult members volunteer to do unskilled manual work. Thus, this is one of the initiatives taken by government towards employment. Next point is money and price level. Macroeconomics studies the role of money, that is importance of money in analyzing the demand for as well as the supply of money. Further, macroeconomics also studies inflation, that is rapid and continuous rise in the price level. Deflation. Deflation means a decline in the prices for goods and services. Deflation is opposite of inflation. And lastly, stagflation. Stagflation is a situation wherein there is high inflation along with high rate of unemployment. Next is money and price level. Classical economists believe that general price level is determined by quantity of money and price level rises along with the proportion with money supply. This is explained by the quantity theory of money. On the other hand, Keynes showed that it is not quantity of money but rather a rise in aggregate demand that causes inflation. Economic growth and development. There is a separate branch of economics called as development economics, which emerged in 1950s and 1960s. This branch of economics, called as development economics, studies the development process in low-income countries. Development economics further studies economic growth, economic development, structural changes in developing economies. One of the first models to explain growth theory was the Harrod-Domer model. Growth theories further explains what are the issues, that is problems that affect the country's economic growth. Next point is balance of payments and exchange rate. Macroeconomics studies what is the impact of trade on a country's national income. Macroeconomics further explains what are the various factors that determines a country's balance of payments and as well as identifies what are the causes of deficit, further suggesting policymakers to correct those deficits. The central bank also plays an important role in managing the exchange rates. Next point is theory of distribution. Macroeconomics studies various theories of distribution. These theories of distribution explains how national income is distributed, how rent, wages, interest as well as profits are determined. Further, the study of macroeconomics also helps in providing solutions, that is, remedies to the problems of unequal distribution of income, wealth, and other resources. Next topic is limitations of macroeconomics. Though macroeconomics provides a strong foundation for understanding the functioning of an economy, but it does suffer from certain limitations. These limitations need to be adapted as well as modified as per the need of the situation. So let's quickly study what are the various limitations. The first one is emphasis on aggregates. Macroeconomic analysis is based excessively on aggregate values. That is, it excessively relies on various aggregate concepts. And due to this, it sometimes ignores the differences that exist at micro level. For example, when there is a rise in the price level, this rise may not take place in case of all goods and services. That is, it is not necessary that all goods and services prices are increased. It may be few goods the prices have increased. Another case is wherein there might be a fall in price or the rise may not take place at the same rate in case of different goods and services. So as a result, policies formed to solve certain macroeconomic problems might have limited effects. Next is the role of money. Macroeconomics deals with various quantities like consumption, income, savings, investment. So all of these quantities have a common measuring tool, that is money. Since we know that the value of money depends on factors like what is the level of inflation and what is the level of interest rate, which keeps on changing in the economy, and that is the reason the value of money also keeps on changing. Therefore, it becomes very difficult to measure and compare the macroeconomic aggregates. Next is mismatch with reality. Often, macroeconomic models are based on unrealistic assumptions, which are criticized because they are far from reality. That is, it does not exist in real world. It is often argued that the models are too abstract and mathematical or statistical, thus to be able to provide a solution to a common world problems. Last limitation is limited application to developing countries. Most of the macroeconomic models are based on assumptions that are only applicable to developed or industrialized economies of the world. Therefore, their application to underdeveloped or developing and emerging economies is very limited. For example, the theory of business cycle assumes that the economy needs to be industrialized. Hence, it cannot be applied to a developing or an underdeveloped economy. Therefore, when policymakers try to replicate these policies of a developed economy in a developing economy, the result may lead to an economic disaster.